Wow.
Mute.
Where did that come
You'll see
from? I don't even have a pump.
Ronson over here admiring his gains.
How big is the world? It's this big. Where do you get on? Over there.
Gratuitous muscle shots before we start the workshop.
Andrea?
Yeah, Andrea's on.
What? Hi, everybody.
You want to tell them what you learned about lip gloss? Chapstick?
About lip gloss?
Chapstick?
Coconut oil works best. Get away from
So it
all
has
the
that in it.
flavors and fragrances and everything else.
Beef suet.
We're gonna get some beef tallow stuff.
Actually, yeah, beef tallow.
From Serena. Yes.
I make my own.
Oh, Deb. Okay, you already know I'm calling on you.
I need to send you a package because I make face lotion with beef tallow and castor oil.
Yes, please do. And send me your recipe for creating it. Or
Yeah.
Awesome. I want to support people who are doing these things. So
Look what I got.
Ooh, Wagyu.
like you.
Yeah, I made my own beef tallow. I get the big thing of suet from the butcher and I cook it down.
Ah, y'all are awesome. I want to do more home stuff.
Yeah, I make my own deodorant too. I don't use deodorant.
Wow.
I use my deodorant. I don't use, I don't walk around stinking.
This stuff with the smell. Yes, I feel you. I feel you.
Does this mean you don't have small children? Is that what you're telling us? Because I can barely just make food. Deb's like, I make my own deodorant. I make my own skincare. I'm like, what the hell? Oh my God, I wish. But no, people want to be fed and played with in this house. So I 100% am like, wow, that's amazing. I will support you if you sell it because that's all I can do.
Yeah. My daughter's about to turn 30, so
different life, baby.
Yeah, I just have the 3 dogs that drive me crazy.
Seasons, baby, seasons.
Yeah, when she gets back from South Korea, we'll be down to 2 dogs. So.
Ooh, South Korea! Wow.
Yeah, she's in the Army.
Much respect. All right, ladies, let's dive into today's workshop. It's going to be a packed one. All right, let's see. Let's start with a little background from the first workshop and then the same disclaimers I gave y'all last time. So first and foremost, to anyone watching the replay, hi, I'm Natalie. You probably know that because you probably found this workshop through one of my social medias. Or one of these wonderful ladies that are here probably shared it with you. So if you missed workshop number 1, where we talked about goal setting based on body composition, how to figure out your current body composition, and then how to set goals for goal body composition, how much muscle you want to gain, how much muscle you want to have on your body, how much body fat percentage you want, what your body fat mass is, what your lean body mass is, how lean body mass is different from muscle mass. All that good stuff is in the first workshop. So definitely you want to do that as a precursor to this, so you already understand where you are starting from in terms of body composition and what your goals are. Today, we are talking about the how to create a plan. Once you know where you're starting from, how to create a plan for what to do to get to the body fat and lean mass goals that you have for yourself. So how to get that dream body you're working toward. Mainly macros. You all wanted to know about how do we set our macros? How do we adjust our macros? Because this is really a game of nuances. So just like we did last time, I am going to start with some baseline stuff that is really important to understand before you decide how you are going to implement your plan, what your plan is going to be and how you're going to implement it. For many of you, this is going to be a refresher, so just bear with me through this part because this is going to be key for those who have not done this work to do before they move forward. And then we'll dive into the Nuances of how to make decisions. Mainly we'll start with, do you start with a build phase? Do you start with a cutting phase? Or do you aim for both at the same time, which would be a maintenance / recomp phase? So how to know which one is right for you, we'll start there. And then we'll get into, once you determine what you're going to start with, which phase you're going to go into, how do you do that? How do you set your macros for that phase and then assess your progress while you're there and then adjust your macros to continue making progress? So we'll go through all of that. Now let me grab my notes over here. Okie dokie. There is one really, really key thing to understand before we get into all of this, and that is training. I'm not going to go into detail on training on today's workshop. The most important thing to understand is that you cannot and will not build muscle or recomp your body without sending a muscle building signal to your body. That happens through consistent, progressive resistance training. And by resistance training, I mean anything that creates resistance in your body, meaning can be body weight, can be any kind of equipment, doesn't have to be weights themselves, but it's essentially weight training, strength training, resistance training. So without training, you cannot accomplish these goals in your body with diet alone. I'm going to say that 3 more times. You cannot change the shape of your body with diet alone. That is why you're all here. Because in the keto, low carb space, everything that gets talked about is weight loss. Maybe they'll talk about fat loss, but it's always about weight loss. Knowing we all want fat loss, everybody's focused on losing weight, and every protocol out there is diet only for weight loss. Most of those are not looking at body composition at all. So that's why you're here, because you found me and you were like, hey, I don't just want to be bones with fat and skin hanging off. I want to look good when I get to my goal weight. I want to be shapely. I want to be fine. You know, I want to turn heads, right? I don't do that just by losing weight on the scale. So like I said, I'm not going to go into the nuances and the details of creating a training plan. We're mainly going to be talking about the diet, because when we're talking about going into either a building phase, a cutting phase, or a recomp phase, the main thing that's going to make the difference is the diet. Because training should always essentially be the same thing. You should be training with progressive overload to ask your muscles to do more, to adapt and grow and recover, and then do more again. That should not change. You don't need to train differently for fat loss than you do for muscle gain. All of your training should be for muscle gain. And let me actually also say this here, as I have said in many other places. We do not train to burn calories. That is not the purpose of training. When you're doing cardio for calorie burn. And that is one of the main things I see most women doing wrong. They are chasing calorie burn in their exercise. They're calling it exercise, they're calling it workouts, and it all revolves around some sort of cardiovascular exercise. If you have weights at all, they're little mini weights in your hands while you're doing cardio. And what that does is burn calories. It does not build muscle. So, although this is not a training class, it is very important that you are doing proper training in every single phase of your body transformation journey, or else you're not going to get the adaptations that you want. So if you need more on the training side, I have 4 masterclasses I did in August. That was a series of how to create a training plan for yourself. Dive into those masterclasses in my Facebook group, Keto Bikini Secrets. Eventually, I will make them all public on my YouTube, but right now they are available in my Facebook group, or if you're in group training or private coaching with me, you have access to those as well. If you want a done for you training program, the Keto Bikini Academy has just opened, only to my build ladies right now, but later today and tomorrow I will be sharing that widely. I will be opening enrollment publicly, so you can join the academy and you will get training programs every single month as long as you're a part of that program, done for you, that are intended to build muscle, and not just build muscle, but build it in the proportions that we want it for that shapely bikini body. Booty, tight core, shoulders, X frame. That's how I build our training. So that being said, let's move on. All right. First decision to make is, do I focus on building primarily? Do I focus on cutting primarily? Or do I want to try to do both at the same time and do a recomp phase? Here's the main thing about how to decide which approach you, actually, before I even get into that, this is for Sue, because seeing your face, you reminded me. Really important to understand. Going into a build specifically, and sometimes called a bulk in the bodybuilding world, but I don't like to call it a bulk because we ladies don't want to bulk. And I don't teach it like bulking, because we don't need to put on a bunch of body fat while we're putting on muscle. That's what bulking is. So building, if you want to go into a build, you are going to get optimized muscle building during that time. If you go into a cut, which basically means a fat loss phase, you're going to optimize for fat loss during that phase. If you opt to go the route of recomp, doing both your muscle building and your fat loss at the same time, you will not be optimized for either. You have to pick your primary. Whichever your primary is, if you're focused squarely on that, you will get more optimization. You will be able to optimize further for that particular thing. And the other thing will suffer a little bit if you want to do both. Okay? So I generally like to say, and I have some masterclasses on recomp and mindset for recomp, in which I explain, when you are attacking recomp, there are some groups that benefit from recomp much better than others. If you are, and I'm going to go through this because this is kind of a refresher or a intro into, depending on where you're coming from, where you're currently at with your body composition. This is why you needed to do, where am I with my body composition first, and what are my goals with body composition first before you make these decisions. A lot of people out there I just see making these decisions based on nothing. So first, the first step in this process is assess your current body composition. If you are considerably lean, if you are a lean, athletically lean individual, and I'm talking about body fat 22% or less, I would say, I would put in that camp, you absolutely should focus on building. There's not a situation where I would say a person under 22% body fat should continue to cut unless they're in a competition prep and they are just trying to get to stage. That is never going to, it's going to be practically impossible to build muscle in a deficit or at maintenance for this group of people. So a build is really going to be right for them. Now, if you have a lot of body fat to lose, we're talking 35, 40% plus, I would highly recommend, and I typically, for these ladies, put them on a slow cut, a progressive, slow fat loss phase. And we will build in things like diet breaks, refeeds, all kinds of other things along that route to keep your body from adapting. But essentially, a cut is typically going to be beneficial for this group. However, in the next section, we're going to talk about the nuances of when this group of ladies will likely need to actually focus on a build rather than a cut. And this is, spoiler alert, going to be for a lot of my ladies who have been stalled. So we'll get back to that in just a moment. But also, this is the group that will most likely get the most out of a recomp. So these ladies, 35, 40% body fat or more, whether you need to go into a build or a cut, you are likely going to get some recomp in that process, either one you select. Or if we decide to go for recomp and kind of stay at this maintenance, which is essentially what I mean. When I say build, I mean we're going to go into a caloric surplus. We're going to increase your calories. When I say cut, I mean we're going to cut your calories. We're going to go into a caloric deficit. When I say recomp, I'm talking about we're going to hang out around the maintenance area of calories. So probably should have started with that. That's what I mean by build, cut, or recomp. Okay, so you ladies that have a lot of body fat to lose by percentage, and this is why it's important to look at percentage, because it really has nothing to do with your weight on the scale. It has everything to do with how much muscle and how much body fat you have on your body in comparison to one another. So when you have a high percentage of body fat, you could be skinny fat. A lot of my ladies get surprised when they're a normal weight, but they're 30%, 35%, 40% body fat. Very common. All right, so you are going to likely get some pretty easy recomp. I love working with that group because it just happens and it's really exciting. Yes, lots of you here have gone through that already, still are. Okay, so now we're getting into the ladies that are kind of where I hang out most of the time. And this is the trickiest place to be. You're somewhere between 22 and 28% body fat. You're in this healthy body fat range. You really could choose any of the three. But I would say most of you would benefit from choosing one, doing that for a period of time, and then switching to the other and back and forth. This is how bodybuilders do it. I will go through a building phase, and then I will go through a cutting phase, and then I will go back and forth on my competition seasons and in between on my off seasons. This is generally where you're going to get the most bang for your buck, because if you're trying to maintain and create all of these adaptations and changes in your body, building more muscle, losing more body fat, it's going to be a little more tricky when you're just kind of hanging out in that healthy range. So I would say as we go through the rest of this workshop, you can be thinking about how to apply this to you to determine what's going to be the best thing for you to do. And some of these other things I go through will help make your mind up on that. By the way, if you have questions about anything I'm saying while I'm saying it, drop it into the meeting chat. I'll go back to those whenever I take a break in between topics. And after each topic, I will give us space like we did on the last workshop for you all to pipe up and say, here's where I'm at, here's what I'm looking at, and let's literally workshop through it live with examples. Not only will that help you, but I think the ladies watching the replay, it'll really help them understand, okay, if this is my context, how do I make the decision? Oh, I'm like Debbie, or I'm like Kim. And then they'll really be able to understand, all right, this is what I need to do. Okay, any questions so far? All right. Oh my gosh, Christina, I love this comment. You are like, I would say probably grand majority of the women that come to me are in your boat. She said, I lost 65 pounds on keto, but still didn't think I looked healthy. I looked saggy. I could ask for hands and half of y'all up here will be like, yep, that was me. Lost all that weight, did all the things, fasted, didn't eat much protein, did all the things they said in keto. And now I just got all this extra and I just look like a smaller version of myself. Saggier, smaller version of myself. Okay, all right. Here's the really important piece that everyone who has worked with me has already done this work, but those of you who haven't may not have. And actually, I will say some of the ladies who have worked with me still haven't done this work because I always have to push about it. First thing that you must do is assess your current caloric intake and macronutrient composition. What does this mean? It means if you have not been tracking your nutrition, you have no idea how many calories or macros you're currently consuming, you absolutely must start by tracking for 2 to 4 weeks without changing anything you're doing to get a baseline. Most women who come to me have not been doing this. They come to me without having any data, and then I say, well, I'm not, and they think I'm going to give them magic macros, and I can't give magic macros without any context. So I ask them for a week or two to track what they're doing, and let's take a look at what their body is doing in response to that. So absolutely do not move on to creating a plan without getting a baseline of where you're starting from first. If I could shout something from the rooftops, I would say stop making plans arbitrarily without data. We wouldn't do that in any other area of our lives. We wouldn't do that if we were trying to get out of debt. We wouldn't look at our finances and say, I'm just going to start a debt reduction plan without looking at how much debt I have or where it's coming from or what is my income and all of the other things. We have to look at where we're at first. So my notes over so I can see them all. Okay, cool. Now, how you do this is not only, and this is the part, most of my clients do this baselining of at least looking at their macros. But here's the part that a lot of people miss. And there were a lot of light bulb moments in the build because y'all, when you took the challenge to do this, the light bulbs were going off. Once you have your baseline nutritional data, first off, you're not just taking baseline nutritional data, you're also taking baseline body composition data. So during those 2 to 4 weeks that you're tracking your macros and your calories, you should also be tracking your weight and your body composition. Whether you're using an at-home digital scale or an InBody or a DEXA or whatever it may be, ideally what I recommend is take your weight every single day. And ideally you have a at-home digital scale that will also give you body fat percentage, which will, those two numbers will automatically give you your body fat mass and your lean body mass just by multiplying them together. So those 4 data points, ideally I want daily. And here's the piece that most people are not doing. You must take the average calories and macros over a 7-day period of time for that time of 2 to 4 weeks, ideally. And you must note your average body composition, calories, and macros over each week. What is happening on average? So you're never comparing one point in time to another point in time. Bliss, great question. Yes, you can take measurements as well. I love measurements for tracking progress. Measurements may or may not tell us what we need for this part of it. If you don't have a reliable home scale, measurements will help you take a Navy body fat composition. You can use the Navy body fat composition calculator to get your body composition. And I went over that in detail on the first workshop. So definitely check that out. Okay, so if we fall into the camp where our home scales are all over the place, should we be using Navy body fat? Yes, absolutely. That's what I ideally, if you're noticing that you have major swings every single day on your home scale, then a Navy body composition calculator may be a good backup to use, and you can look at the data from both. But in general, as long as you have some way of determining your weight and body composition over that time. And also, awesome question, Mary. If I have not been on point, is it okay to track for 2 weeks and start over? Yes. So this is the way I'm teaching this workshop is as if you didn't have any macros given to you yet. You haven't been in a program, you haven't been working with a coach, you're totally on your own. Or even if you have been working with a coach, if you know, kind of throw that out and pretend we're starting from scratch. That's where this workshop is coming from. And this is the way I would work with, essentially I'm teaching you how I would work with a client and how I would make these decisions of what we're doing from day one. So really key with this though, is that you don't change anything. So a lot of the time when you sign up to work with a coach, you want to please the coach right away. So you're already kind of thinking of eating healthier than you were before. I always tell my ladies that there's going to be zero judgment. So please just eat the way you've been eating and track it after the fact. Just make sure you track every single thing so that you can see real numbers. And whenever any of my ladies have been off track, or I have untracked days, or partially tracked days, and we need to get back on track, this is how I do that. I say, okay, let's get a new baseline. I'm not going to ever give macros arbitrarily. So now, the real key with this, and this is the thing that where I saw all the light bulbs going off, was most women are used to looking at the scale on any particular day and saying, I lost X amount or I gained X amount. And they only look at that day. And then they think back to the time they were their leanest in the last few weeks. And they keep thinking about that number as being their low weight, and then they're always comparing against that. This is why I say you must get 7-day averages. This is the number one thing that most people do wrong. They don't know how to compare data. So for the ladies in my group and that I work with privately, I give them a progress tracking template that is outside of the app, because we do all of this tracking inside my app. But I give them a template that is an Excel spreadsheet, basically, or a Google spreadsheet. And you can plug in all your numbers and look at your averages each week, and then you compare your averages each week. So this is how we look for trends. So the first thing you have to ask yourself is, with the way that I've been eating, with the average number of calories and macros, have I gained weight? Have I lost weight? Or have I maintained weight over this period of time? And you can look more closely at your body fat percentage and lean body mass. However, let me just tell you, scales are very sensitive when it comes to lean body mass and body fat percentage. It can flip-flop those things based on fluid balance, just like the scale fluctuates based on fluid balance. So this is another reason why I like to look at the averages, because some days are going to be higher, some days are going to be lower. And it's mostly driven by fluid balance, meaning what is your hydration level, your sleep, your stress level, what you ate that may or may not have agreed with you, how late you ate the night before, and whether you still have undigested food in your digestive system. All of that stuff is tracked. These home scales are not DEXA scans. They're not looking specifically at the tissue. They're using formulas, arbitrary calculations, estimations to estimate your body fat percentage, your body fat mass, your lean mass. And this is for Sue also, and for all of you. If you see that your lean body mass is going down, we're going to get back to this again when we get to the how to assess your progress part and make changes. If you see that your lean body mass is going down, it's very likely that that was driven by water weight loss, because most of these scales are tracking water weight with lean mass, particularly if you're changing your carb consumption, because carbs pull water into the muscles. And so it appears that you have more lean mass when you're consuming carbs. This is another reason why you hear in the fitness space that you can't build muscle without carbs, or that carbs are so essential for lean mass. They're considering the fact that it holds water in the muscles, so it seems like you have bigger muscles or more lean mass. So always consider that. If you have been off the rails eating a lot of carbs and you cut your carbs back out, you're like, oh no, I'm losing muscle. It's not likely that you're losing muscle. It's likely that you lost water, and with that water, it's showing a lower lean body mass. So just keep that in mind. So mainly, though, when we really want to look at trends, I've talked about this before, fat loss and fat gain happens a lot faster than muscle gain and muscle loss. Muscle does not You don't gain and lose muscle quickly. It doesn't happen that fast. It takes a long time to build it. It's a slow process. Watch the first masterclass to understand the timing, or excuse me, the first workshop to really understand the timing. And then fat loss can happen week to week, and fat gain can happen week to week. Muscle is going to be more like month to month. So if you are gaining weight consistently over 2 to 4 weeks, not just water weight fluctuations day to day, but on average, if you're gaining weight, it's most likely you're gaining body fat. On average, if you're losing weight on the scale over those weeks, it's most likely body fat loss. And then if you're maintaining, you're maintaining. And when I say maintain, I mean within 1 to 2 pounds. Those of you who are nitpicking over 0.2 pounds of loss or gain, that ain't nothing, okay? That is maintenance. Okay, so think about like a 2 pound or a 1 kilogram in either direction as maintenance. So unless you're seeing that consistently for 3 to 4 weeks going in one direction, that's not a trend. If you went up a pound and down a pound and then up and then down, you're maintaining. That's another big misconception. I'm stalled. No, that's what we do. That's what it does. Okay. Any questions yet where we're at right now? Susan was asking about the best scale to buy. Oh boy, there's so many camps. There's so many camps. I will say most of my ladies who use Renfo don't love it. What's the other big one, y'all, that has? Put in the comments the scales that you would avoid. Better to write down the ones not to buy than the ones to buy, because there's a couple of them that y'all really don't like. So share those and then share in the chat your favorite scale or the one that you think you like the best. I love my at-home InBody, and Coach Bronson has a code for that. I think I have that posted in a lot of my YouTube videos. He has it on his YouTube and in his link tree. So it's a little pricier, but I love it. I've been able to trust it quite well. Before that, I was using a more affordable digital scale called a VitaGoods scale. That was really good too. I liked that one a lot. All right. Ron, did you have a question?
No, it's not a question. It's just I wanted to let people know you literally need to tape off where you're weighing yourself, because certain areas of your home or within that same area can change the weight of that scale. Because I have something that's 5 pounds and I have to I keep it in a certain part of the square, ceramic square in my bathroom. If that scale moves over, I can tell, because I'll get on the scale with that 5 pound to get off and get back on in that other area. And it can be a pound and a half difference because of the leveling in your home. So you have to make sure that when you are weighing, that you're weighing in the exact same spot. You can't move it to another home. You really can't.
That's a great tip. Thank you for that. Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, love. And it's also just another reminder of why we don't want to nitpick on these little things, these little amounts, because if it's a pound or 2 off, it's nothing in the grand scheme of things. So once we get into that, we'll get a little bit more into that. Question, I have 10 pounds of breast implants. Is it possible the scale will take that into consideration or automatically call it body fat? Most breast tissue is body fat anyway. So I wouldn't worry about it. Where you're at, this is why we get a baseline and we look at trends. Because unless you're getting the implants taken out next week, it's not going to make any difference. It's there. It's going to be there every time. So take your baseline and then track from that and look at trends. That's all we ever worry about. We don't care about so much what the number says, what the percentage says. I know some of y'all really do, and y'all are out there chasing every calculator and every different scale to get it to tell you you're a lower body fat percentage. Your body is what it is. I don't care if you have
when you add hair.
I don't care if you have 5 different measures from 5 different scales. That doesn't matter. Pick one or average them all out if you want. Pick the one that gets you in your feelings the least, because it ain't that big of a deal. Your body hasn't changed based on what some measurement told y'all, okay? Pick it and move on. Trends. Yes, trending, exactly. All right, so let's move on to how we make these decisions, right? All right, so let's say you have your baseline data. You've plugged in the averages. You see, here's my average calories, my average protein, fat, carbs, my average body weight. Am I trending up? Am I trending down? You would guess that this would be cut and dry. If I'm losing weight and I want to lose weight, great, I'll just keep doing what I'm doing. If I'm gaining weight and I want to lose, then I'm just going to lower my calories and my macros. If I'm losing and I want to gain, then I just need to eat more, right? Not that simple. So sorry to say it, not that simple, because you may not be doing the right thing to move you in the correct direction. It's not that simple, and here's why. What if you are under eating, you're barely eating anything, you're fasting for 72 hours a week, and you're eating 800 calories on the days that you are eating, and you're not losing weight, and you have body fat to lose? Does that mean, oh, I just keep cutting? Now I'm just going to eat air every day for 7 days, 24 hours a day. I'm not going to eat any calories, and then I'll lose. And guess what? Yes, you will. You will. If you starve yourself, yes, you're going to lose weight. Guess what else? You're going to lose a heck of a lot of muscle, and you are going to lose metabolic health. Your metabolic rate is going to slow down. And now if you look at a piece of lettuce, you're gaining weight. Yep, I figured we'd have some on this call. That is me. And that was a lot of the ladies that came to me, because I have ladies in 2 camps. I have my ladies who are off the rails. It's very clear what we need to do. And I have my ladies who are barely eating and they can't hope to lose a pound. Those are the 2 main camps. So here's the deal. So many of you in the low carb space are in this camp because you've gotten so much bad advice over the years. You've been told, don't eat protein, it's going to turn into sugar. Eat more fat, eat sticks of butter, just keep eating more fat. Or you've been told you need to fast. You need to intermittent fast. Now you need to fast for 24 hours. Now you need to fast for 48. Now you need to fast for 72. Now you need to just eat sardines. And don't work out, because you don't have to work out on keto. Just all the wrong advice. So don't worry, Susan. Yes, it absolutely can be fixed. So here's the deal. The simple equation I just mentioned a moment ago, or scenario I mentioned a moment ago, you have a lot of body fat to lose. You want to see fat loss, but you have either been maintaining or gaining at your current intake. If you've been overeating, you know you're overeating because you're just shoving your face with all the carbs or junk or fat or whatever it might be. Some of y'all came to me high fat carnivore and you were just eating all the fat. You are the simple ones. You are the ones you come to me and I'm like, oh yes, easy town. I know what to do with her. Cut, easy cut down on the fat. Boom, we're done, right? Cut down on the carbs, cut down on the fat. I have very few ladies come to me on a standard American diet, but when they do, it's almost always, this is the situation. We got to cut carbs, cut fat. It'll be beautiful. It'll be so easy to lose body fat. Throw in good training plan. They're building muscle. Beautiful. So congratulations to those of you who have been binging your face off. I know you feel like you have all these feelings around what you've been doing with food, but congratulations. This is going to be the easiest journey for you. All you got to do, number 1, stop the binging, and then just dial things in, and it's going to be glorious. So that's easier said than done, obviously. But all right, yes, Christmas casserole. All right, so the rest of you fall into this camp of, it doesn't matter, by the way, how much body fat you have on your body. If you're lean, if you're normal range if you're over fat. If you have been under eating, you will need to go into a reverse diet, a build. We will need to go into a surplus to ramp up your metabolism before we try to cut further. Okay? So the big question here is, how the heck do I know if I've been overeating or undereating? So for some of you, it's very clear, right? You're either binging your face off and you know you're overeating, or you're fasting all the time and you're eating one meal a day and you're barely eating anything. So you know you're undereating, right? But here's where we'll get into some formulas for those of you who are trying to determine. So for all those ladies in that kind of gray area in the middle, this is for you. First, and this is simple, I'm not giving you complex worksheets with formulas this time because there's kind of a more simple way you can do this. You can look up your TDEE, total daily energy expenditure, with an online calculator, tdeecalculator.net. It's typically the first one that pops up when you Google TDEE calculator. There's many different ones. They use different formulas and they will give you different numbers, but I'm about to tell you how to kind of take that 10,000-foot view. So you could do that, or you could look up a BMR online calculator, basal metabolic rate. This is your, or RMR. If you were just breathing and not moving at all in a day, this is how much your body, quote unquote, should burn in a day based on the data you input that you tell it. The TDEE is total daily energy expenditure. This is your BMR plus exercise expenditure if you plug in exercise data, non-exercise activity thermogenesis, NEAT. So all of the random, all this talking with my hands I'm doing, all of that movement that's not exercise, and TEF, that's thermic effect of food. I'm not going to go too far down the rabbit hole, but just know that when you're consuming whole real foods that your body has to do more work to break down, you will actually burn calories while you're eating. And you burn the most calories from consuming whole food protein sources. Okay? So this is another reason why when we get to the macros, protein is so important. So all of those things go into setting your total daily energy expenditure. I want to share my screen because I'm going to give you some examples of what this looks like for me and how to use it to assess whether or not you may be over consuming or under consuming. Share screen. Oh wait, I'm going to go here into there. Yes. There it is. Go. Okay, cool. All right, so let's expand this. This one is the TDEE calculator. And I just plugged in, I'm 40 years old, female, I'm 125 pounds, I'm 5 foot nothing. And I put in sedentary because they're gonna give you, if you can see here, they're gonna give you all of the different numbers for all of the different levels of exercise anyway. So I generally just put in sedentary. And then I put in my body fat percentage, which is optional, but it's always gonna be best to give them as much information as you have. So I put in my body fat percentage, 25%. So I calculated it. And what it's telling me is my maintenance calories should be about 1,546 per day. It's telling me my BMR is 1289. If I'm sedentary, 1,546 would be maintenance. Light exercise, 1,772. Moderate exercise, 1,997. And then we go up from there. And then if you go down, it's going to tell you, your BMI. We really don't care about BMI. It's going to give you a little ideal weight. Forget about all that. Use my previous workshop to figure out your actual ideal weight. And then it gives you stuff we don't want to look at. Macros we don't want to look at because they're not great. So the most important thing to look at here is look at what it's telling you for basal versus sedentary, light, moderate, heavy exercise. And I believe on the first screen, it gave you what they mean by the different levels of exercise. So you could, say, well, where do I really fall in there? So I would look at, okay, how many calories do I consume on average? And I'm going to tell you, I know mine are somewhere between 1,800 and 2,100 on any given day. So on average, they probably fall around 1,900, let's just say 1,900 to 2,000. So look at that. That makes sense that for moderate exercise, which I have pulled way back on my training, I'm not training like I do when I'm in prep. So I would definitely consider myself right there. And I would say, great, this is about what I eat. So I'm right on track with where this thing is saying I essentially should be. And by should be, this means they're using their formulas to determine essentially what a healthy metabolic rate would look like for someone with your context. So you could use this. Now, here's a cool thing to do. There is kind of some common ways of doing this with just multiplying your weight by certain numbers. It is said that if you multiply your weight by 15, it would give you your maintenance calories. Now, in this case, mine are not too far off. If I multiply 125 by 15, I get 1875 for maintenance calories, which is not terribly far off, somewhere between the light exercise and moderate exercise. That's about how much I eat on my lower calorie days that I don't eat as much. So that's kind of on track for me. A lot of the time they'll say, okay, multiply your weight by 12, and that's how much you would need to eat to be in a caloric deficit. So if I did that with mine, it would put me at 1,500 calories, which makes sense. That's probably a nice slight deficit for me. Some of these things are going to tell you to multiply by 10. That would be a deep deficit, which would be a little bit under my basal metabolic rate. So for me, it's pretty accurate. Granted, I already know that I'm metabolically healthy. I already know that I have a really solid metabolic rate. Now, if I wanted to go into a surplus, they say multiply your weight by 17 or 18. So by 17, that would be 2,100 calories. That puts me, now if I changed my exercise, that also changes how much I'm burning every day. So you also have to keep that in mind. But let's just say 2,100 calories for me right now would be a surplus. So there's the cheat sheet there. Let me stop the screen share and go back to the chat so I can see the questions, if there are questions.
Hey, Nat, I had popped in a question, but I think it's mostly been covered. And it was what I thought. It was just that I'm trying to figure out my maintenance, and also simultaneously ended up sick and having to reduce my activity. And so, my thought was probably you don't really know exactly how much you're burning anyway. So that'll just be an added sort of extra deficit when I go into fat loss, which seems to be sort of where you're headed. But I was just curious because like right now, if I'm barely maintaining, if I were maintaining my normal activity level, I might still be losing slightly. So that was just.
Yes. So it does adjust because, and this is why, like as coaches, if somebody comes to me and we're doing a comp prep, for example, and everything I do, by the way, with all my clients is basically taking what you would do in comp prep, but I apply it to lifestyle, right? But in comp prep, we are just this much more dialed in. Everything's super, super tight. So in that case, it's really important for me to know for my clients, what is your current activity level? So I ask you all to track your steps. It's generally a good way for me to understand how much activity you're already getting in a day. Because the last thing I want to do is start throwing cardio at you to get you burning more when you're already taking 20,000 steps a day. So that's one of the first places we start. Okay, what is your current daily activity, your current training program? And then we want to modulate. We're going to talk about this when we get down to the adjustments part, but We want to modulate one variable at a time and not change everything.
Right. That's what I realized. Like it wasn't intentional at all, but that's exactly what I put in there. It's like a confounding variable that I wasn't expecting to have.
Exactly. Yes. Yep. So we want to look at the landscape and say, okay, what can I isolate?
Mhm.
Yep.
Cool deal.
Okay. Let's see. Aaron asked, what would you consider our level of activity just based on the workouts? Probably moderate. I would say moderate with the training programs. Yeah, if you're training 3 to 4 times a week, I don't remember. Let me look at what they said according to this particular TDE calculator, because that's the other thing. Some of them use different formulas. Let me go back and see what they said. So you need to, when you're using a calculator online, you need to look at what they're attributing so you can match it up appropriately to what you're doing. But let's see. It says activity. All right, so it's saying for sedentary would be office job, or sorry, I have these ads popping up. Okay, sedentary would be office job. Light exercise would be 1 to 2 days per week. Moderate exercise 3 to 5 days per week. Heavy exercise 6 to 7, and athlete is 2 times a day. Now that may be different if you use a different calculator, but that's what this one is saying. So I would say everyone doing my program, you're going to be in that moderate level, most likely. Yes. Juliana.
Laura has the same question as I do. Is that ideal weight or current weight? Because
Play with
current weight
both.
times 12 is a ginormous number for me. That won't work. My current weight times 12 is 2,340.
Yeah, so that's actually what that is, though, is what that's telling you is the goal where we want you to be is a lot higher than where you are. So
Okay.
congratulations, you just answered the question. Yes, use your current weight because that's where you are right now.
Okay.
Right. So what we're saying is for my body right now, if I had the ideal metabolic rate, how much should I be able to eat and maintain my weight? If it's telling you a number that's a lot higher than what you're eating right now, that means you're in exactly the camp I was just talking about. We need to restore your metabolism.
Got it.
Make sense? That's where the nuance comes in. Perfect example. You could play with it.
1,000-calorie difference. I should be invisible by now, right?
And now you know why the people at your bod pod keep freaking out about how much you're eating. They want you to eat a lot more. But we can't just jump up there. If we just jump up to what it says, you're going to put on fat pretty fast. Yeah, exactly. So this is such a great illustration. This is why I wanted to do this as a workshop of why we don't just use formulas and just use protocols that people say out there, because it's arbitrary. We have to look at where we are and say, whoa, now I see where I'm at, and this doesn't make sense. Why is it so far off? Yeah, because we're not optimized. We got some optimization to do. Beautiful. Thank you for that. Okay, so that gets us into this next part. And anybody else want to run some scenarios and examples? The cool thing is, even if you're unsure, if you can trust those numbers and you're like, okay, you could have skipped that entire calorie section and jumped into the macro section we're about to go to and play with it and find where you need to be without even messing with the calories. So for anybody who maybe like gets overwhelmed easily and doesn't want to mess with all that, just stay with me, because this next section I'm going to give you some simple ways to test it out for yourself. Okay. And I will tell you, I used to maintain my weight at 1,400 to 1,600 calories. And the more I have been, and Mary Grace is my body twin, same for her, the more I've been on this journey. It took a long time. I've been bodybuilding for 8 years now. It took a long time for me to get to, and probably when I started, I don't even know where I started. If I looked back at my very first prep, I was probably maintaining at like my BMR. And now I'm eating 2,000 calories and maintaining. So this is the beauty of focusing on muscle building. Because if you keep focusing on fat loss, you're just going to put on the same 20 pounds and take off the same 20 or 50 or however many pounds. It's going to be fat every single time. It's just going to be putting on and taking off fat. So this is why we've got to train, eat protein. We're going to talk about all those things next. All right. Any other questions before we move on? All right. Let's get into macros. The part y'all all really want to know, right? Okay. First things first, most important thing to know is we don't mess around with ratios over here. So I'm not going to ask you to calculate your ratios based on your calories. That's why I'm saying you could jump down to this section and forget about calories and just work with macros, and you can still set some damn good macros for yourself. So first thing we always do is protein. Focus on protein first. Number one goal for all of you. I don't care if you are 4'11", speaking as a 4'11 3/4" woman. If you are not yet consuming 100 grams of protein a day, that should be your first goal, no matter where you are. Every single adult human woman needs at least 100 grams of protein. Now that that's said, where I like to start with people, depending on where they are, once again, you're going to look at where you're starting from. How many grams of protein am I currently consuming? If it is not 100, do everything you need to do to inch up to 100. And I always say, once you set your ideal macros, you don't have to do it perfectly tomorrow. If you were eating 50 grams of protein, aim for 60 tomorrow, aim for 70 the next day, and work over days and weeks to get up to your goal if you are far from your goal. If you're within 10 or 20 grams of your goal already, work toward that goal now, okay? But baby steps if you need to. All right, because as women, when we do drastic things, our body freaks out, and that stress will cause more problems than the plan. So you can have your ideal plan and then work toward it. Okay, so protein should be somewhere between 1 gram per pound of your lean body mass and your current body weight, or even more than your current body weight. I'm going to share a diagram from Coach Bronson in a moment that is really cool, that is inside his book, by the way, and the toolkit that you can download as a part if you get the book. But before we get to that, I always like to say, based on where you're starting, this is where you set your goal. If you are not yet consuming 1 gram per pound of lean body mass, that should be your first goal. Yes, Whitney, she's got the book. Oh, we got somebody else coming in. Awesome. Okay, so first things first, you've got to calculate your lean body mass. If you don't know what that is yet, watch the first workshop and you can figure it out pretty easily. It's your fat-free mass. It's everything on your body that's not fat. So if you know your body weight and your body fat percentage, you can calculate your lean body mass. And we did that on the first workshop. So figure out your lean body mass, determine if you are eating that much protein yet. If not, work up to that. That's your first goal. If you are there and you need to further optimize, meaning you have fat to lose, you have muscle to gain, you can go up to, if you have fat to lose, the next thing you would look at after your lean body mass is your goal body weight. And we also calculated that in the first workshop. So you take your ideal body weight or your goal body weight and you work toward that much protein next. And this is particularly for anyone, probably all of you, or else you wouldn't be here, that is not making the progress you want to make. If you're making progress toward your goals, you're gaining lean body mass and you're losing body fat, you don't need to change anything. That's the big thing. We always think we need to be changing everything. If it's working, you don't need to change it. I have lots of clients that I don't change their macros for months because they're working. So once again, we're going to go back to assessing your progress along the way. How do you assess the progress? The same way we got the baseline. You look at your data over weeks and you look at the averages and you see what's happening. If you're inching closer to your goals, according to the timeline we talked about in the first workshop, a realistic timeline for muscle gain and fat loss, you don't need to change your macros. Is it possible to eat too high of protein in a day? Not really, but it will depend on other factors. So we'll get to that in a moment. So lean body mass, goal body weight, current body weight, if you are already in that middle range or that lean range, you're probably going to want to lean toward your current body weight in protein. Or you can even go above that. Especially for my lean ladies who are looking to build, who really need to build muscle, you can go above your body weight. And now let's go to Coach Bronson's diagram. That's a good segue. Oops. There it is. Screen share. Go. Okay, so let me make this bigger so I can see it better. You can see it better. All right, let me explain what he has going on here. So, simple macro management for a healthy and lean body composition using the 1-to-1 method. This is how Bronson starts pretty much all of his clients. We just talked about maintenance, muscle maintenance, which on the first workshop, I mentioned to you all that everybody's goal should always be gains, muscle gain. All of my ladies, none of you I want just hanging out at maintenance in terms of your muscle mass maintenance, meaning preservation of muscle mass. Now, to the point I mentioned earlier, when you are in a fat loss phase, that is not the time that you're going to be optimizing for the absolute most muscle gains. You can gain muscle while you lose body fat, especially if you're in that sweet spot of the population that recomps easily. But for most people, especially if you're already in that healthy to lean range and you're in a body fat loss phase, your goal is muscle maintenance. This is how bodybuilders do it. This is how I do it during a cut. If I get to the end of a cut and I haven't lost any lean mass, that is amazing. I'm most likely going to lose a little bit of lean mass as I focus on fat loss because I don't have a lot of body fat to give me energy, so it may pull from my muscle. Okay, but for most of us, we want to gain muscle. So for preservation, muscle maintenance, 1 gram per pound of lean body mass. That's what I was just saying is a good starting point. He has it here as more protein for more gains. So 1.5 times your lean body mass. Let's take mine, for example. 1.5 times, I have about 94 pounds of lean mass. That would put me at 141 grams of protein. That is above my body weight already. So that goes past my lean body mass, that goes past my goal body weight, that goes past my current body weight. If I were to go to 2 grams per pound of lean body mass, I'd be at 188 grams of protein. That's a lot for me. I've never had my protein that high. But I have been 150, 160 during competition prep. Here's a key. When we're in a fat loss phase, to protect muscle mass from loss, and ideally get some gains if possible, the higher we go in protein, the better when we are in a caloric deficit. So if your plan and you say, okay, it sounds like fat loss phase is right for me, more protein. Usually most coaches are going to increase your protein when you're in a deficit. We want more protein in a deficit to protect that muscle mass. So this is all, as you can see, very nuanced. It's not like here's what you do if you're in this situation, period. You have to look at a lot of different factors. And so I look specifically at each client. Where are they? What do they want to do? You know, all the things to determine, and a lot of biofeedback too. Sleep, mood, libido, all those things I ask you all to track inside my group programs and my private coaching clients. We need to look at all that, digestion, bowel habits, all of it to determine adjustments. But as you can see, you can go pretty high on protein. To Deb's question, the high amount of protein is not typically an issue until we're starting to get really low on our fat consumption. And that's when I see digestive problems, constipation, energy issues, things like that, because it's very hard to digest that much protein when your fat is very low. So let's look at the lower half of this now. When we're focused on fat loss, this is where we pull the fuel calories down. And we're going to go back. I'm going to shut this off and we'll talk about the fats and the carbs in just a moment. So, and he put percentages here just as a reference point. We don't base these off of ratios, but typically if you're setting your numbers based on what he's saying here, you're going to end up with about 30, 35, 40%, anywhere up to 50% protein. And, you know, could be anywhere from 50 to like 65, 70% of fuel calories, fats and carbs, or fats in this case, and then 5 to 10% or 0 to 5% on his for carbs. So we reduce the fuel to lose body fat. We increase the fuel when we need to go into a surplus. That's the thing, the fuel calories, the fats and carbs, that is going to determine whether we're at maintenance, whether we're in a deficit, or whether we're in a surplus. Once we have our protein for what we're trying to do, we don't generally need to change it much. I mostly only change it for clients, maybe 10 grams. And that's very rare. I'll do that in certain cases, but most of the time we set our protein and we leave it there. And then we manipulate fats and or carbs depending on where the person is. So, and he has here something I agree with wholeheartedly. You don't want to be going under 50 to 70 grams of fat per day. Generally, when my ladies are on a cut and we really get low, we might get somewhere between that 50 and 70 grams. I will tell you, I have personally never consumed under 50 grams of fat, even when I'm getting on stage. Consistently, I should say. PSMF is a thing where, and we can get into that in a minute, but let me stop the share. I highly recommend against PSMF for most people. And if and when you're going to use PSMF, if you know what I'm talking about, it's protein sparing modified fast. Basically means you're eating nothing but protein and very, very little, if any, fats and carbs. That is rabbit starvation is what it is. So I generally do not recommend it. And that is where I would absolutely start to see problems with digestion. And it's not really because of the protein consumption, it's really more from the lack of fuel consumption to balance that, particularly fats. So any questions about protein before we move on to carbs and fat? Let me look in the chat. Okay, cool. Okay, Whitney.
Hey.
What up?
So I do kind of have a question because, you know, I don't have any problem eating that protein. I'm like, how much more can I have? You're like, woman. But as I move down, of course, in this next phase, I'm definitely wanting to do the cut because I'm at that 40% skeletal muscle range. And so really the whole thing about wanting to build and lift heavier and heavier and look for PRs, I don't know if I want to do that this next, as far as my training go round. I'm like, let's keep what I have. I want to make it challenging, but I'm not trying to push to put more weight on. I did 130 pounds on my heavy set of hip thrust yesterday. And I felt like I probably could have done more. And I'm like, okay, maybe I just need to stay here for a bit and work on the other parts. So that's kind of my mindset, is to keep it where it is for the training, but on the macros thing and pulling that down. And we're talking about protein. As I move down in size and weight, and I know you were just like, when you get to that peak protein, it's rare that you come back down. That's kind of basically what I heard you say. When you get to that body weight of protein, but if my body weight drops by another 15 pounds or so in the next, 10 weeks, 12 weeks, is that something, again, do I need to just leave it where I've had it and only manipulate the other? Or is there ever a time where you're like, all right, girl, you can pull that down some?
Going into a cut, I absolutely would not pull it down. I would at
Okay.
least keep it where it is, if not increase a little bit.
Right.
And typically the way I do it with clients is we'll start, especially I look at where they're starting from, right? So
Mhm.
if they're not eating as much as I want them to, I will not put them immediately at where I want them to be. I will put them a little lower, because I know that as we pull the fat down, or the carbs, or both, you're going to get hungry.
Mhm.
And then if we increase the protein while we decrease the fuel, it will help keep you satiated, and you're less likely to struggle during the cut. So
Right.
I like having somewhere to go with it. But I wouldn't say you're probably, do you know what your lean body mass is in pounds?
My lean body mass let me pull that up real quick and see.
Do a little calculation.
Um, it's upstairs.
Okay, well, do you know your body fat percentage?
My body fat percentage is still hovering around like 31, 31.8, 32, between 31 and 32.
Okay, so
And
your lean body mass percentage is like 70, 69, 70, something like that.
right.
So what's your body weight?
It's 145.
Okay. We do that by 69, which is 31%. So you have about 100 pounds of lean mass.
Yeah.
And you said, how much protein are you eating right now?
Between 150 and 165 on any given day.
165 is about 1.65 times your lean body mass. So
Yeah.
beautiful place to be. You do not need to pull it down.
No, okay. But when I do finally get to where, okay, I'm at that 22 to 24% body fat, do I still need to leave it there when I finally get to kind of what I would want to call maintenance?
Yeah, this is where I always say, and I say this to clients too, when they're like, okay, what are we going to do 3 months from now? What are we going to do 6 months from now?
You're like, I don't know.
We look at things week to week and month
Yeah.
to month. So I can't tell you what you're going to do down the line when you get there, because you did your timeline last workshop. How long is it going to take you to get there?
For that, it would be 10 weeks. That's why I said 10 to 12. So I know it's going to take me about that amount of time. And just kind of looking down the road. And I mean, the thing, like you said, a lot of times it's that seesaw. Your protein's in the middle, leave that son of a bee alone, eat the protein, and then manipulate the other two.
Yeah.
I just didn't know if there'd ever come a time where, if I get down smaller, even down to that 20% range, still keep the protein where it is. I mean, I just was kind of curious if
I
that
will
was.
tell you. Just for context,
Mhm.
I was eating 160 for most of my prep, this last
Mhm.
prep. So if we take, let's see, I think that was about that might have been 2 times my lean body mass. Let's use my current lean body mass. It's about 1.7 times my lean body mass currently. Granted, my lean body mass didn't change much during prep. So I lose about 15, maybe 20 pounds during a prep. So from January of 2022 to December of 2022, I was still eating 160 grams of protein.
Okay.
We
All
might have
right.
started me at 150 and then went up to 160.
Right.
And then maybe came back down to 150 in my off season. But we changed it by 10 grams.
Yeah.
After
And I mean, yeah, that's impressive. And I mean, for me, like that was my whole thing. You're like, well, girl, up your fat a little bit and have some more protein, and maybe that'll keep you from eating things you shouldn't. So I just got to keep that in mind. Keep eating that protein, and I'll manipulate those carbs and fats, which we'll get into in a second. But I just wanted to ask about that protein ever moving, just based on the whole thing about being smaller over the course of time and leaning out and your weight being different. But if you really base it on your lean body mass, that should stay where it should stay. So anyway, just kind of wanted to touch on that for a second. Thank you, ma'am.
Sure thing. And if you find that you're losing body mass consistently, not like water weight, because the first week you went keto and it looks like you lost 5 pounds of lean body mass, but consistently over time, if you start to see that that's going down faster than you want it to, or going down at all, increase your protein. That's how you're protecting that lean body mass.
Okay.
So the main goal here, the main thing here is don't be afraid of that protein, ladies.
No. And I mean, it's just like I said, I'm really, as far as my training side of things, wanting to just still be challenged, but not like constantly looking for a PR or, that kind of, and I'm just thinking about how am I going to do that? Because I want to see what muscle I have. I just got to take the stuff off the top so I can see it. So that's Aaron's laughing. I'm like, it's that blubber that sits on you. You're like, I got this sausage arm. I swear to God, there's stuff under there, but it looks like just one roll of sausage hanging off.
Next training program. You're gonna love this training program. It's right up your alley.
All right. Well, thank you, ma'am. I will leave y'all alone.
Erin, do you have a question?
Yeah, Whitney's making me think of all these things because what she said about like her skeletal muscle, like my percentage is actually already pretty high. Like that's the one thing that my scale seems to calculate. There's an upward trend of about 2% since we started, and the same thing with the muscle mass. So that's good, right? So now I'm thinking like, do I really want to build more, or do I need to get rid of some of the fluff to be able to see what I have more? Does that make sense? Like
yes.
I'm so
yes, and yes,
not
and.
sure. And with the protein, like I'm already pretty high, like, which is fine. I know that there's been some discussion over this recently, but I actually bumped back up my protein. I just feel more comfortable with it higher. I usually end up going over anyway. So like, do I want to continue to just hang around there or bump it up to that 2 times like that you showed in the one graph?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately what it comes down to, and what I ask my ladies every week, we're looking at biofeedback, right? So we want to look at, how do you feel? Are you feeling satiated after your meals? Are you feeling uncomfortable? Are you digesting well? Have you had any bowel changes? Are you sleeping well? All of these things really matter when it comes to setting that number. But also, we don't have to be like obsessive about it either. If you're within a 20-gram difference and you're already above your body weight in protein, that's fine for you to be,
Okay.
a little bit higher some days, a little bit lower some days.
Okay.
Essentially, it's not going to make a huge difference.
Okay.
Once you're already at your body weight or more in protein, more protein at that point isn't making a difference. But eating less than what your body needs, that's what would make the difference.
Well, that's interesting because that's one thing that I don't want to say mess up on, but that's one thing that happened around Christmas time was I was up a little higher on my carbs. I didn't go crazy, but I was up a little higher on my carbs. But one day, like my protein was like a lot lower than it usually is. And I don't know how all of that factored in to that. Like I was like I said, I was stable for like 4 weeks. And then this past week, just like 2 pounds, but enough that like something happened. So
yeah, and almost always when I see that clients have gone over on their fuel calories, almost certainly they haven't hit their protein. And that's more of a lifestyle thing. We're like, let's say I just wanted to give somebody advice and they weren't working with me, or even if they were working with me, and if they said, hey, I don't want to track anything. And sometimes I do have clients like that, stresses them out to track. If all they did was focus on eating more protein, not even by the numbers, but just choosing foods that were higher in protein, they would automatically eat less fuel, which means they would automatically eat less total calories, and more of their total calories would be coming from protein than it is from fuel. And that would create change in your body in a positive direction, even if you knew nothing about the numbers. It's just always going to happen that way until we get to that threshold of so much protein and not enough fat. So yeah, I mean, ultimately, I think where you're at, it's all gravy.
Yeah, I just don't know whether I should be trying to tack on the calories or the extra nutrition, or that's what I had planned on, but now I'm not too sure after doing all this, and I don't know. Could
Just
play
keep,
around with it, I
keep
guess.
tracking it. Yeah, keep tracking
Figure
it.
it out.
It'll become clear over the week.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure thing. Let's see. Christina had a question here in the comments. She meant this as a question. I think you meant to say, would I only do 1 day of PSMF days sprinkled in to break adaptation? I never did a lot of that. Would that amount cause problems? Well, the question is, why do you want to do a PSMF day? You're saying to break adaptation or adaptation. What kind of adaptation are you talking about? Are you talking about your body not adapting the metabolic rate? So you mean to reduce the possibility of metabolic rate slowdown? Tell me a little bit more about where your mind is with wanting to do the PSMF. Laura, go ahead.
Okay, this would be a good question for the end, but I'm going to go ahead and ask it because I'm hyperventilating a little bit. Okay, I did the TDEE calculation. Right now, my calories are 1485, proteins 140, carbs are 40, and fat is 85.
Okay.
It says my maintenance calories are 1707, and my moderate calories would be 2205.
So maintenance calories for sedentary?
Yeah.
Would be.
And then my moderate for the working out would be 2205.
Yep, we got some boosting to
And
do.
my BMRR according to that, or BMR, is 1422.
Okay, and you're currently eating around your BMR then?
Be at 1485.
Yeah, so you're just a hair above your BMR right now. And eating where you're at, close to your BMR, are you currently losing? Are you maintaining? Are you gaining? What's been the trend?
I was kind of maintaining like 184, 185. And then after I got over being sick, I had a bit of a whoosh. And what's it been, like a week or a week and a half, I upped my protein to 150. And I don't hit it exactly every day, but I'm getting like 147 to 150. And now I'm actually maintaining like 178 to 179.
Okay, so you dropped a little bit, but that was
Yeah.
after you were sick.
That was after I increased my protein.
Okay, and when you were sick, were you consuming that same average, about 1480 something?
No, when I was sick, I was having a hard time getting calories in, period.
I suspected as much. So that drop you got was because you were in a deeper deficit when you were sick.
Okay.
But since being sick, you said you haven't put the weight hasn't come back up. It's maintaining where it went after the drop, right?
Right.
So that's beautiful. That's a good sign. Increasing your protein was a good thing to do because what it's doing is ramping up your metabolism. So now you're able to maintain at a lower weight where you were before. So that's a good sign. And that's essentially what we're doing when we're doing this metabolic restoration process. It's a very slow, very slight surplus. And we want to see that your body is maintaining there. And then we want to add a little bit more. And then we want you to maintain. And then we want to add a little bit more. And we want you to maintain. And that is how we bring you eventually up to that 17 number, and then eventually up to that 2000 something number. It's a very slow process, but that's what we need to do in your case. And the protein is definitely the place to start with that. So
you had said stay at that protein and that my same fat until the end of the build, and then like first week of January, go ahead and up my fat like 10 grams. So I would just do that as the plan for next week.
Yep. And
Then
then
we'll
see how your
contract
body
that.
responds.
But what's going to happen between 1485 and 2205?
Okay, remember how I talked about my 8 years of bodybuilding? Took me 8 years to go from 1,300 up to 20 to 2,000. That's
Okay.
about, what, 100 calories a year if you look at it like that. Now, granted, I was doing a lot of cuts over that time to get to stage. And had I not done that, had I focused on muscle building, metabolic restoration for a solid year without cutting, I probably would have got there a lot faster.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to take that long as you don't go, oh, I'm freaking out, I want to cut my calories. And this is what so many women do. They stop that process because they just want to see the fat loss. They just want to see the scale go down. So instead of sticking with it and bringing their metabolism up slowly, they keep jumping ship and cutting calories again. And then guess what? You got to start the process all over again.
Yeah.
So you're doing the right thing.
Which is what I mean, that's what I had in mind, of trying to be patient, rebuild my metabolism, and then, but I don't know if you saw my comment. I feel like I'm going to have to set the alarm at night and get up and eat.
Not at night. No, not at night. Just front load it. Front load it. Move your breakfast earlier. Start earlier. Start with a good solid bolus of protein that first meal of the day. And then, 3 meals. We just had Aaron ask on the Zoom the other day about 4 meals a day. You may need to go to 4 meals a day and space them out.
Yeah, I'm already at 4. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Oh yeah. Fun stuff.
Just a little shocked.
Awesome. Okay, Christina gave me more detail. Keeping the metabolism from adapting. It seems to speed up results of weight loss because the metabolism has to keep guessing. Then you add in a surplus day 2. The strategy is meant to keep the metabolism honest. It's how Craig explains it. Yeah. Yes, I know that Maria and Craig do a lot of PSMF with folks. It's a strategy. Ironically, we just talked about this I think it was on our Zoom the other day, about there's a lot of different ways to do this. But we're about to get into the fuel, so that's where we'll talk about this a little bit more. So we set our protein, we keep it there. If anything, we're most likely increasing it. We don't want to be decreasing it in most cases. Once we're done with that, the whole shebang here, whether you're gaining or losing, whether you're in a surplus or a deficit, it comes down to your fuel calories, because protein does not get stored as body fat. Practically impossible for that to happen. So let me first preface this by saying, anybody who's ever been afraid of gluconeogenesis, don't be afraid of it. It is a necessary, very important process in the body that would keep us alive in times of famine when we could not get to fuel. So, and it is very, very important to ketosis. If we didn't have it when we were on a keto diet, we would die. So we want gluconeogenesis, so we don't have to worry about that. So first things first, eat your protein. Now, carbs and fats. I want to talk about carbs first, because most of us, all of us here are on some sort of low carb diet. So I'm just going to say your carbs can be anywhere from 0 to 100, I would say, on a low carb plan. This is 100% entirely determined by your preferences and your tolerance. And you can ask some questions if you have questions about where you should set your carbs, but in general, I would say that if you have insulin resistance, metabolic syndrome, you're severely overweight, I would go more the keto carnivore route of carbs, total carbs under 50, under 30, or even under 20, 25. And I would always count total carbs. Rule of thumb, do not only look at net carbs. If you only look at net carbs, There's a whole bunch of other stuff that you're not looking at that's a part of the puzzle. It doesn't just not exist because it's fiber or sugar alcohols or whatever the hell else they now can put in that category so they don't have to put it on a food label. Don't get bought into that net carb BS. Okay? Total carbs, because if it's going in your body, it has calories. Okay, so always track total calories, total carbs. And most people trying to lose body fat, you're going to want to be 50 grams or under, especially if you're dealing with metabolic syndrome or insulin resistance of any kind. That 50 to 100, anywhere in that realm, is generally going to be for my metabolically healthy ladies, especially if you're on the leaner side and you want to be eating more carbs. Some of y'all absolutely love a carnivore diet. Great. I'm not going to tell you you need to change that. I'm not going to tell you you have to eat carbs according to your cycle or any of that BS either. You set it based on your preferences, what is sustainable for you, what you can stick to over a long period of time, and if your body can handle it. And then we have the whole discussion of food selection, and that's for another day. I have a masterclass on that, so check that out. But you're going to set your carbs based on your preferences and your goals. Now, any questions about carbs? Because once you set your carbs, unless you're in a place where you want to play, you're ready to play with them and you want to play with like where your carbs are going to be at, once you set your carbs, they stay the same too. That's what I love about this keto low carb stuff. It is so much simpler than ratios and the fitness industry and all the things that they do, because they're doing everything based on ratios and calories, and it's a lot of work to change things. Here, once we set our protein and we set our carbs, the only variable we ever have to mess with is fats. So it's so easy on the numbers anyway. All right, do we have some questions about carbs? I think Whitney and then Mary Grace.
Let me unmute. Hold on. Am I unmuted? Okay, sorry. My hand had been up for a minute, and this may be something you're addressing in a couple minutes. And it kind of was at the end when Erin was talking about she's moved up to eating 4 times a day. I was going to ask if I want to eat from 3 to 5 times, because I keep looking for, you know what I mean? I'm like, my brain wants something. And so I'm like, if I could just spread this out, maybe that would be better. Is it okay to eat, 5 times a day if I want to split it up like that? There's no real rule on that. And of course, I know you've talked about fasting and how you don't need to do that necessarily, but I'm not going to eat until from like 6 in the morning to like midnight or anything like that. I'm going to be eating from, time I wake up till probably 5:30 or 6 at night, something in that range of normalcy. And so I just wondered if that was okay to do that, spread it out however you want to, and that's not a problem at all.
Yeah, let's say, okay, the most important things are calories and macros,
Mm-hmm.
and then getting them in throughout the day.
Mm-hmm.
Meal timing and frequency and quantity per meal is going to be the nuance, the minutia, right? So that is less of an impact overall. However, I will say going with larger meals in terms of at least each meal being at least at minimum 30-35 grams of protein or more. I like a good 35 to 40 grams at least or more per meal. So as long as you're not going to where now you're just having like 20 grams 5 times a day, that's going to be less beneficial than doing 35 to 40 per bolus per meal. So I would first make sure you're having at least 2 or 3 solid size meals.
Mm-hmm.
And beyond that, it's not as big of a deal as long as you're not grazing all day.
Right.
That's what starts to detract from health in general. You want to eat, let your body digest that and use that and get hungry again and then eat again. And there's something you said about brain.
Yes.
We don't want to eat to appease our brain. We want to eat to nourish our body. So if it's a brain hunger, that's something to check and say, do I really need to be eating eating right now, or am I just looking for something?
It's my Natalie Fathead that I need stuck on my pantry and my fridge to tell me to back it up, back it up. Your answer is not in here. So yes, but I do seem like sometimes I'm like, after I've eaten a meal, I'm still, my body's like, hey, was that it? Are you still what? So I'm wondering, maybe I need to increase like my first really big meal of the day or something and just see what that does and just kind of work on that to see what my body does when I change some things up. But I just thank you for that, for at least that much, kind of giving a little guideline there. But yes, my brain does want to say, oh, but no, go get this. And I'm like, no, we're not going to have that sweet thing. We're going to have sips of elements. We're going to go over here and drink our electrolytes to kind of get that brain from looking at something else that's sweet and bad. So, okay, that's it. I'll shut up now. Thank you.
No, that's good because a couple of things for anybody who's in that camp too. If you're still hungry after meals, then especially immediately after, and I know you got little ones, so I don't mean to call you out, but I know a lot of ladies are in the camp of eating while distracted, eating quickly, eating on the go. Slow down and chew your food because your body doesn't even know you ate yet. That's going to be the first thing to do. And then look at, how much protein and fat did I have together in this meal? Because that's what makes a meal satiating. So yeah, definitely. And I generally recommend 2, 3, at the most 4 meals per day. Once you go beyond that, we're not likely talking about meals anymore. We're talking about snacking. And we never want to feed cravings. So just another piece that I see a lot in groups all the time. What do I do for this craving? And everybody's giving ideas for recipes. As long as you're feeding cravings, you're going to continue to have cravings. It's like the monster under the bed or the stray cat. As long as you feed it, it's going to keep being there. So the worst thing to do is feed a craving. So this is where I would say, make your plan. And whatever it is, whether it's 3 meals, 4 meals, even if it were 5, stick to that plan because it's going outside and drawing outside the lines. That's really the limbic brain trying to drive you to do something you don't want to do. So love it. Great question. Juliana.
So it's a little slightly off topic, but I had a dream last night and Natalie and Whitney, you were both in it. And I took Natalie to Build-A-Bear and we bought a steak Build-A-Bear and put Natalie's voice in it that said, Whitney, you are not hungry. You are just tired or bored. Go do some push-ups or whatever. But that was my dream last night. There's no steak Build-A-Bear. Like, not that we hang out, but that was like, I'm dreaming about you and your fathead Whitney or
That's
Natalie in
so-
her refrigerator.
Oh my God, that's so funny. I had somebody else tell
Yeah.
me they had a dream about me setting them up on a date or something, just like yesterday. So this is really strange. But yes, that's a good dream to have. That's one I need to wake up every day and be like, oh yes, now it's not to get in the pantry. So that's hilarious.
Y'all are too funny. Mary Grace.
Hey, so I just had a quick question. That's hilarious, actually, Julianne. I had a quick question. So I've been playing obviously with my macros, and logically, I know the answer. I've been upping my carbs, so obviously I know that for each gram of carbs, we hold a certain amount of water, in our cells. So that's automatically going to create some increase in scale weight. I'm just wondering if that's like literal and like in the fact that like, okay, right now I'm at 40 grams. I'm not sure I want more carbs, but does at some point it kind of just tapers off, or is that like, if you go up to 100, 200, that's, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's very unique to the individual. It's also going to depend on where your carbs are coming from. For instance, if you're consuming more simple sugars, so we're talking fruit or anything sweets, anything like that, it's going to burn faster and get out of your system faster. Complex carbs, like your starchier carbs, your grains, your potatoes, your anything like that, that's staying in your system longer. So it's funny, we just talked about this with Erin. The timing of when you're eating your carbs in your day, and when you weigh the next time. So there's a lot of different variables. So I can't even tell you for sure because it's going to depend on what the carbs are, where the carbs are coming from, what time you had them, did you train that day, did you not? It has so many, it has to do with so many different things. The more important thing, like everything else, is understanding how your body responds. And looking at what happens with particular carbs and the timing and all of that. And I've been playing with that too. And this is another reason why when we're keto and carnivore, it simplifies everything so much, because that's not a variable we even have to worry about or try to decipher what's happening. So
Yeah. I'm at 40 right now. I'm not sure I'm really interested in going much over that. Like, I just don't really have a desire for it. But I think maybe moving forward, need to focus more on finding maybe some fattier meats, because right now with what I had meal prepped and stuff, I'm having to like put ghee on stuff that I normally would,
yeah. Yep.
I
Yep.
think that the best move rather than moving the carbs is probably just to buy some fattier meat the next time I go to the grocery store.
Yeah, girl, enjoy that. Exactly. And
Yeah.
that's the perfect segue into the fats discussion. So the beauty is we've got everything settled, and then we just say, all right, what is my goal and what do I do with my fats based on my goal? So if you are entering your building phase, whether you are just underweight, undermuscled, seeking to gain, or you have fat to lose, but you noticed, yep, I'm in the camp that is metabolically adapted and I need to ramp up my metabolism, we're going to do that by slowly and systematically increasing your calories. And that's going to come from fats once you've established where your protein is and once you've established where your carbs are. If you're one of those people who was not eating your lean body mass in protein yet, I would keep also increasing your protein. To Laura's point, work to get it up to at least your ideal body weight. And then you can keep inching up over that as well. That's not going to harm you in this process at all. It's going to protect the muscle you have. It's going to help you build more muscle without putting on body fat quickly when you start increasing your fat macros. So we get our baseline of how much have I been consuming, and then we set where we want our protein to be from there, or where we want our carbs to be from there, and then we say, okay, if you have no idea where to set your fat, Bronson's example, let me pull that back up again. Here it is. All right. Okay. So Bronson's example here is, okay. The one-to-one method. So what does it mean by one-to-one? One-to-one is 1 gram of protein for 1 gram of fuel. So let's say you set your protein at wherever it is on here. Let's say you set it at 100 grams. Let's just use that as an example. You set your protein at 100 grams, and let's say you set your carbs at 25 grams. That leaves you with 75 grams of fat to match your fuel to your protein in grams. So his one-to-one is in grams, not percentages. We're not saying one-to-one by percentage, we're saying one-to-one by grams. So you want to take your protein, and let's take me, for example. I am currently eating 1 gram per pound of my body weight. So I'm 125, I'm eating 125 now. That'll range on different days. Sometimes it's higher. But let's say that's where I was going to set it. Absolute 125 grams of protein. If I were going to go with the one-to-one and set my carbs at 25, that would leave me with 100 grams of fat. That's kind of the starting place if you're like, I have no idea. Now, ideally, you're going to have some sort of an idea because you're going to do the work that I asked you to do in the first place. So let's do this. Did I stop the share? I think I did. Okay. So you're going to look at what you have been consuming, and then what your results have been with what you have been consuming. Let's say you're eating 150 grams of protein, 150 grams of fat, and 0 carbs. You're a 0 carb carnivore. So you're already 1-to-1 protein to fat. And you are rapidly putting on body fat. I would start dropping your fat macro by 10 grams at a time. I always tell people, I like 10 to 15 at the most that you're making a change at one time. So if you're rapidly putting on body fat, meaning every week you're seeing the scale go up and you're seeing that body fat increase, not 1 week, 1 pound, right? Averages over time. But we're rapidly seeing, a couple of pounds every week or something. Now it's like, okay, clearly I am over consuming. And you are not in the camp of the metabolic restoration. You know you need to eat less. Start pulling from your fat macro because there's nowhere to take your carbs because you're at 0. Let's say you've been playing with your carbs and you're at 70 grams and your fat's at maybe 100 and your protein's nice and high. And you're like, okay, what do I do? You could pull from your carbs. See how you feel eating that many carbs. I know for me, that was part of my process. I was like, ooh, getting up over 70 doesn't feel very comfortable. Getting up to 100 felt terrible. And then I said, you know what? I'm just going to start scaling back the carbs. The key here is you're not doing more things than one. You're not like, let me pull my carbs and my fat. One thing at a time, and then you wait to see how your body responds. So if we're by manipulating your fuel calories, you are manipulating your total calories. So if we take fats down, and I like to just think of it like fats have 9 calories per gram. So I like to just think of it like in tens because it's like 100 calories, a little under 100 calories. So 10 grams of fat is 90 calories. So I just like to round it and say that's about 100. So I know if I'm manipulating by 10 to 15 grams of fat, I know that I'm manipulating my calories by 100 to 150 calories at a time. You will see a lot of people in the fitness industry, a lot of trainers and nutritionists doing these 500 calorie deficits for fat loss. That's a lot at one time. And if you're in my camp of people who are already like, you're like, I'm eating below where the TDEE says I should be eating for maintenance. If you drop your calories by 500, you will lose for sure, but it's going to be very harsh on your system and you will start to adapt. So this is where I mentioned on our call the other day, and to Christina's point, there's a lot of different ways we can do this. We can eat maintenance throughout the week and have 1 day of PSMF. That will effectively put you in a deficit for the week without having to take your food down every day. If you're a person who just absolutely hates being on a diet, absolutely hates having to eat less, that may be a good thing for you. You may say, you know what? I can handle 1 day of PSMF a week. I don't want to cut my calories the rest of the week. Or what we're doing in Rhonda's case, I used her as an example the other day too, and Mary, we're playing with a fat fast where you have an OMAD 1 day a week. And you have little fat feedings to keep your energy up and your ketones up throughout the day. And then you have a 1 regular size meal. That is not PSMF. In my opinion, it's a lot healthier than PSMF because it's feeding your body the fats that it needs. So you're not getting under that 50 grams of fat a day, ideally, doing it that way. Either way, you're dropping your calories lower for the week without having to cut calories every single day. If you're a person who's like, I don't want to have to do that 1 day a week, I always start with standard macros every day, not changing them based on when you're working out, when you're not doing things like fasting and OMAD and PSMF and all of that. Those are things I reserve for down the line after we've already been in a cut for a while. And now we need to throw some other things at it so I don't keep taking food away from you. But I do not like to start people there. I like to start with a nice small deficit and we go from there. And even if, and you know, for some of you who were coming to me not eating very much, Laura is a good example of this. I think that's probably close to where I initially set her macros because she was not eating a lot. And so I didn't want to cut them really low, but I also am not going to jump her up to the TDEE. So if you're in that metabolic restoration period, all you do is very slowly and carefully start to bring up your fats and or your proteins if they weren't already high enough. Now, very important, going back to my very first point at the very beginning of this workshop, if you are not strength training, you are not going to build your metabolism. It's not going to happen just with diet. If you're only doing it by increasing your fat, you are going to put on fat. The very, very key part of this equation is that you are sending a muscle building signal to your body with your activities while you are increasing your calories. So you are giving your body something to do with those calories. You cannot restore your metabolism with diet alone. So those two things have to go hand in hand. Okay, so with that being said, questions about setting your fat macro or about adjustments, how to make adjustments along the way. The basic way I can explain it, and it is very nuanced. This is why people hire coaches, because I look at all of these variables, the body composition, how did they train this week? How did they sleep this week? All of the biofeedback to determine what we do on a week-to-week basis. Erin, go ahead.
Okay, so I have a question with the carb to fat ratio. Like I've often played around with like that seesaw concept and whatnot. But at what point carb to fat is that ratio off, if that makes sense, where it's not fitting into, you know what I'm saying? Not going too high on carbs while going too low. Am I saying it right? Like for instance, like
I don't
my
think
carbs
about it
right
like
now.
a ratio at all, actually.
What?
I don't think about it like a ratio at all.
I just mean, does it really matter at the level that we're at? Like right now, I drop my carbs back down to, I'm at 80. That keeps me in a spot that I'm comfortable with. And my fats are 110. So if I were to up my carbs a little bit, but keep my fats at 110, am I like going too high on one and too low on the other? Does that make sense? Like, or is that only when people eat like a super high amount of carbs that comes into play?
Well, it's more, okay, so Erin has been on the metabolic restoration and the building side of things, focus on muscle building. So we have been finding her thresholds. And that's essentially what you're doing when you're doing this metabolic restoration. And I generally say, okay, we're going to start with fats, right? She started with fats. She started pulling her fats up. And then I was like, you know what? I want to play with my carbs, start playing with the carbs. The main thing I always say is don't do both at the same time. So don't be like, and actually that was a mistake at the beginning that she started doing. And then I was like, wait, no, each week decide which variable do I want to play with and play with one at a time so you can see how your body responds to that. The easier way to think about this, and this is how we do it, like in my off season, for example, protein and calories. So you don't really have to think about where are your carbs in relation to your fats. What matters is my protein is set and how many calories am I consuming? And then what you're doing is inching your calories, your total calories up until you find a spot where you're like, I'm not losing. That's what we had to do with her because she kept losing as we built. If you keep losing, then that means you can keep eating more until you find that calorie threshold. And so you can play with a little bit more carbs this time and a little bit more fat this time if you want to. And then what you're doing though is you're looking at the total calories and what it's doing to the total calories. Because if you're pulling one down while you're pulling the other one up, you're not actually changing your calories at all. So what we're really looking for is what is the total calorie threshold where you can hit that without putting on body fat, without losing body fat, without losing lean mass. You found your maintenance. That's how you find your maintenance, basically. So it really doesn't matter where your carbs are in relation to your fats. That's totally depend. That's like a personal preference.
So would that more come into play on a daily basis? Like if I was under on my fat and wanted to bump the carbs up, or vice versa, like that sort of thing?
Okay, yes,
not
I'm glad you said
overall.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is like what I tell the ladies that I work with if they want a little more flexibility. Or even regardless what the situation is. When you're trying to hit your macros on a day-to-day basis, exactly that. This is where the seesaw comes into play, right? It's not about where we set them. It's about what are you doing on a day-to-day basis. If you look at it like protein and calories, then let's say you eat a muffin in the middle of the day. Now you're like, oh no, I blew my carb macro. Well, if you pull your fat down for the rest of the day, you won't go over your calories. So that's more of, yeah, to your point, that's more of a managing, hitting your macros on a day-to-day basis.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes
Rather
sense.
than a where do I set them?
So then I really shouldn't worry about that carb to fat other than the daily compensation for maybe eating something that I probably shouldn't have had. Or
Yes, as long as you're not trading all of your fats for a shit ton of carbs and you're like, okay, my
Yeah,
fats
no.
are now going to be 20 grams because I want to
No.
keep the carbs, right? Like
Yeah.
that's the situation. That I know bodybuilders that do that stuff,
Yeah.
but that's what we don't want to do is like go too low on the fat. But other than that, yeah, totally fine to play.
Cool, thank you.
You're welcome. Mary Grace.
Just real quick.
Bronson's leaving me to go to the gym, y'all, because I'm
That's-
taking too long. I'll meet you there.
It's okay. You're a lady usual.
I'll be quick. I'm sure
Good
you've been on.
stuff.
Sorry, I'll be quick. Yeah, I was just curious because I know I have these variables this past like week or two, between illness and medication stuff for the thyroid, and definitely been feeling some inflammation. Obviously, this building back up my macros hasn't gone exactly like I would have hoped. I'm just curious, like I was planning on not really making a huge shift this coming week now that hopefully I'm getting out of the illness. Is that what you would suggest? I mean, because technically I'm still in maintenance. I mean, it's like a 0.6 pounds on the average, for the past 2
Yeah,
weeks.
that brings up a great point. So this is when we're making adjustments. This is the other thing for most of the time, I don't do a lot of adjusting. I don't have to do a lot of adjusting with my clients. But when you're on it, like Mary Grace has also now been in this, like, let's find your threshold before we cut again. So when you're in that metabolic restoration phase, this is where you're going to be doing more adjusting because you're trying to find that threshold, right? If you have other variables come into play, illness, injury, so now you're changing your training schedule, and so your activity level throughout the day is different. So changing training, illness or injury, travel, or you just had a week or two of not tracking everything or being off track with your macros, so things are a little all over the place, you do not change anything. We never change anything until we can get a solid control of the variables. So if anything comes in to like throw off the variables in any way, no changes.
Yeah, so I'll just hold, that's what I was thinking. I would just hold steady this coming week and see, hopefully now I'm on the other side of all those things and then see what the real reality is of what I'm doing. All right, cool. I just wanted to know.
Ladies, also, when it comes to your cycle, it's really important that you pay attention to the trends with your cycle. Make notes, track your cycle, because you don't want to be making decisions on how you're changing your macros based on something that's happening on the scale because of your cycle. You want to know that it's coming. You want to take that into consideration. Usually I don't make any changes for my clients, whether we're doing a cut or a build. I don't make changes around their cycle. I'm like, okay, let's hang out for another week and see what happens. And then we'll decide. Kim asked a really good question. So glad you asked this question. Will the Academy focus more in January on cut, build, or recomp. This is completely based on the individual. So the academy is going to run all year long. I take everyone at where are you and what is your goal and what do you need to do to reach that goal. So all of this that I just explained to you all in this workshop, I look at each individual coming into the academy, and once a month, I take a look at that data again. As long as you stay in the academy, each month you're going to get kind of my fresh eyes on your data and recommendations. So when you first come in, like for everybody from the build, for example, at the beginning of October, I set initial macros for everyone. Then I taught them how to do all this, and so they could play with it on their own. January, when you come into the academy, I'm going to be looking again and making recommendations, setting new macros for you. At the end of the month, if you stay in for February, I'm going to do the same thing. So each month, those who stay in the academy will get a recommendation for what they should do next, essentially. And it's all going to be based on you. So some people are going to be cutting. Some people are going to be building. Some people are going to be focused on recomp. That's part of why I wanted to do the academy and not just have a program every once in a while. And this all came out of from the shred. Everybody came in wanting to shred. But when I look at everybody's data, I was like, yikes, these ladies we need to build their metabolisms up. So even in the shred, I set people's macros based on where I knew they needed to go. Even in the build, some of y'all were still on a cut. So this is why I was like, I got to stop calling these programs certain things, because the people who need me are in all different places and I want to meet you where you are. So yeah, you'll get the right thing for you regardless. If you have another question, Kim, or was that basically it? Oh, you're on mute.
That was basically it, because I want to cut and then build, because I know where I want to get, but I'd rather get low and then high. If you can do that.
Yeah, I think already just knowing where you're at, I think you're ready for a build. I think we need to find your thresholds. You're in a great spot.
Thanks.
For that. Mm-hmm. Okay. Oh, Susan, I'm glad you asked, because I almost forgot. We can wrap this up with some info about the academy. All of the ladies in the build already know this information, and it's dropping after I get back from the gym because I got to go train. But I will drop it tonight in the Facebook group and everywhere else probably. Okay, so if you want to sign up for the academy on a month-to-month basis, so this is a no commitment. You could do 1 month at a time, and then it will renew until you cancel. That is $150 a month. If you do a 3-month package, all of the packages are renewals. So you sign up for 1 month, 3 month, or 6 month. The 3 month and the 6 month, you'll get some savings. So the 3 month is $375, effectively making it about $125 per month. And you would pay $375 every 3 months. And you can cancel before the end of that if you don't want to continue for another 3 months. The 6 month is $600 for the package. So you're basically paying $100 a month. And that would only be charged once every 6 months. And if you want to cancel before the next renewal, you'll have that option as well. So those are the rates for the academy. Now, what is in the academy, for those who don't know, it's everything I do with private clients, but it's done in a group environment. And just so you know, to start working with me privately starts at $300 per month. So this is basically, if you did the month to month, that's half the rate of what it costs to work with me on a one-to-one basis. But you're getting the same thing. It's just all happening in a group environment. So you won't be communicating with me privately like my private clients do. They have access to me 24/7. We have weekly check-ins where I'm responding to them privately. I'm changing their plan if we need to. They get a custom training plan. So everything in the academy is group. So there will be a group training program that everybody will be doing together based on your level. intermediate, advanced, or a beginner intermediate. Right now I'm splitting them in two. Later on, it's likely that I will have 3 levels of training. And then, so you'll have that all together, or if you worked with me privately, I would literally write you a custom plan for you. The other difference is that inside the academy, if you want feedback on your technique, your form, I highly encourage it. You can post videos for feedback, but that's going to be in a group environment. That's an amazing, amazing thing, but a lot of women are afraid to do that. I'm going to be really pushing for it more in the academy, even than I did in the build. So we are actually going to have a dedicated space for that. That's a little improvement I have coming. Thanks to Mary Grace for the suggestion. She didn't even know she was suggesting it to me. So we will have a dedicated forum just for training feedback and training questions where we can get deep into, am I doing this lift correctly? And another new thing that's coming for the Academy that I did not have in the build is a dedicated space for recipe sharing and food sharing. So it will not get lost in the chat because the main general chat, y'all can post about anything. You can chit chat about whatever you want. You can share wins, you can share vulnerability, and we would lose recipes and then it's hard to find the recipes again. So there will be a dedicated food forum, a dedicated training forum, and then a chat forum. So that's one really big change I'm making. The other big thing, to answer your question, Susan, will there be information on how to start strength training? The big thing in the academy, I think the biggest thing probably in the academy, that is a change and why I'm actually switching platforms. So all my private clients are coming over from an old platform that I didn't have this ability to do. Inside of my app, there is educational resource libraries. I call them vaults. You'll see in the academy there are a few different vaults. There will be a general vault for general information and education. There will be a training specific vault. So for those of you in the build that saw this big long spreadsheet of training tips and you had to pull that up and go to the videos, that will actually have its dedicated vault. So I can post all kinds of helpful resources on specific training topics. There will be a food or a nutrition vault where all of the nutrition education will live. And there will be a mindset vault where all of the mindset, emotional, all of that stuff, emotional eating, all of that education will live. So you'll have these libraries where you can go and pull resources from based on what you really want to focus on, because everybody's kind of coming in with a different focus. You can go through all of it, you can go through some of it, but it'll be a very robust, rich, education-rich area. And then y'all always give me new ideas. So whatever y'all need, I'll be creating and putting into the resources. So that's a really amazing thing about the Academy. Basically, you're going to get coaching. And the way that that works is that everybody does a weekly check-in, or you have the opportunity to do a weekly check-in. There's a form you can fill out, and then I ask you to also update all your data. So you're tracking all the data we talked about, your macros, your training, and your body composition and your biofeedback. But in addition to that, you're doing a written form about how your week went, just like all my private clients do. And once a week, I do a video, basically a feedback video of a group feedback video for responses to those check-ins. So if you have specific requests for support or questions or challenges, I read through those and then I'll share, these are some of the wins we had this week. These are some of the challenges, and then I'll answer questions every week on a weekly video feedback. And then the coolest part, the fun part, is that we hop on a Zoom like this every single week in the group where everybody hops on if they can, and you can get additional guidance and support here in a group environment. It's very similar to the way this workshop worked. You can ask your questions, all of that good stuff. So all of that is in the Academy, and the training programming will be changing every 6 to 8 weeks or so throughout the year. And it's all based on what I'm doing. So I will be sharing basically the way I train with you all based on your fitness level. So I'm super excited to birth this baby. it's been in my mind for a very long time, and I'm thrilled to get this thing off the ground. So I hope to see you in there. All of the info and the links to enroll will be posted later today and tomorrow, and then you can join anytime. That's the cool part. You don't have to wait for a challenge, although a challenge is coming after the first week of January. Let everybody get settled into the new year, and then the Grace and Grind Challenge is coming back. So I'll be posting about that after the first. But if you have any questions about the Academy, I'll be posting about it. You can inbox me on Facebook, on Instagram, wherever, and ask me your questions. And I'll probably do a specific video about it to post on the socials as well. Susan, you have one more question? Lay it on me. Mary.
Are you talking to me?
Go ahead, Mary.
Oh, yes. I wanted to know if you were doing any, I know this is separate, but didn't know if you were doing any prizes and stuff for the build, and when you're going to let me know if I won or not.
The build, no, the build.
Just messing.
The prize for the build was your results. So y'all got.
I know. I'm just messing around.
Mary's just used to winning because she won my shred. But actually, this is great. This ties into Susan's question as well. She says, if you join the Academy, does that give you access to the challenges? And that is a yes. I actually made that change. To join the challenges, you must be enrolled in the Academy. So for the Grace and Grind, if you want to be eligible for the prizes, which Grace and Grind will have prizes, I'll be announcing all that first week of January. But as long as you join the Academy, by the time we start the challenge, then you will automatically be enrolled in the challenge. And as
Thank you so much, Nat. And anybody that's in there, get the hell in the Academy now. Thank you.
As long as you're enrolled in the Academy, any challenges that I do throughout the year, you will automatically get enrolled in. And there is a really exciting one coming that was inspired by my ladies who are curious about competition prep, that I will be doing later this year, and it'll likely be a late spring, summer, but it'll be a mock prep with a photo shoot retreat weekend at the end. So I'm very excited about that. I'll be putting all the details together and announcing the dates for that as soon as I settle on them, but I'm thinking I want it to wrap up around August so we can go somewhere sunny and beautiful for photo shoots. So more to come on that and all the other fun things in the new year. You all are amazing. Thank you for all the awesome questions and examples. I think that those watching this back will get a ton of value out of it, just like the last one. And that is because of you. So love y'all. I will see you on the interwebs. And Happy New Year if I don't see you before the 1st. I hope to see you in the Academy. Come join. We have a lot of fun. As you can tell by all the jazz hands right now. Oh, let's do a photo. Let's do a jazz hands photo. You guys are the best. Thanks for indulging me. All right, I gotta go get some gains. Let's go get some gains.
Bye.
Bye. Peace out to 2023.